Country music has given us legends who shaped Nashville's history. But behind the spotlight, not every star was as golden as their songs. Some of the biggest names in country music shocked fans with arrogance, scandals, and behavior that turned admiration into regret. From singers who disrespected their fans to artists whose egos destroyed friendships, these stories reveal the darker side of fame. Here are 13 of the worst jerks in country music history you'll regret loving. Blake Shelton. Blake Shelton, one of country music's biggest modern stars, has often been praised for his charm, humor, and chart-topping hits. Yet, behind the good old boy image and his role as a beloved coach on The Voice, Shelton has carried a reputation that many fans and industry insiders would rather forget. His larger-than-life persona sometimes drifts into arrogance, and his behavior has left more than a few people labeling him as one of country music's biggest jerks. Shelton's love of alcohol has long been part of his public identity. While he often jokes about drinking, critics argue that his behavior at certain events crossed the line. Reports of drunken outbursts and inappropriate comments made headlines, with some fans feeling disrespected by his carelessness on stage. Instead of being the approachable country boy, he came across as dismissive, even mocking those who had supported him from the very start of his career. Social media has been another battleground for Shelton's reputation. Known for his sharp tongue on Twitter, he's engaged in feuds, hurled insults, and brushed off criticism with crude humor. While some admire his honesty, many saw his online persona as mean-spirited, particularly when directed at ordinary fans. That edge of nastiness clashed with the friendly, light-hearted character he portrayed on television, creating a jarring double image. Even within Nashville, Shelton has drawn fire. There have been whispers about his arrogance in the studio and his tendency to put himself above fellow artists. His messy divorce from Miranda Lambert only fueled the flames, with accusations and rumors leaving a bitter taste among longtime fans. Some say he turned personal struggles into public spectacles, choosing to capitalize on drama rather than handle it quietly. What makes Shelton such a controversial figure is the contrast. A man who can deliver heartfelt ballads about love and pain, yet act dismissively toward the very people who made him a star. The gap between the songs and the man behind them has left many questioning whether Blake Shelton is the charming Oklahoma boy he pretends to be, or one of the worst jerks country music ever celebrated. Toby Keith. Toby Keith is one of the most recognizable voices in modern country music. With patriotic anthems like Courtesy of the Red, White, and Blue and American Soldier, he built a career that resonated with millions of fans, especially in the post-9/11 era. But while his music painted him as a proud, unapologetic American, his personality often painted him as one of Nashville's most difficult figures to admire. To many, Toby Keith wasn't just outspoken, he was downright arrogant. Keith became notorious for his fiery temper and his inability to let go of grudges. Perhaps the most famous example was his long-running feud with the Dixie Chicks, now known simply as the Chicks. After Natalie Maines criticized President George W. Bush and the Iraq War, Keith plastered her face next to Saddam Hussein's during his concerts. The stunt may have thrilled some supporters, but it exposed a vindictive side of Keith that turned off many fans who saw the act as cruel and unnecessary. Beyond politics, Keith was also known for clashing with industry figures. He fought publicly with record executives and journalists, often lashing out at anyone who didn't fall in line with his vision. While some admired his refusal to play by Nashville's rules, others felt his behavior crossed into egotism, as if he believed himself untouchable. His larger-than-life ego often overshadowed his genuine talent. Even his interactions with fellow artists painted him in a bad light. Keith developed a reputation for being dismissive toward up-and-coming musicians, rarely offering support unless it benefited his own brand. Stories circulated of him belittling opening acts or demanding top billing, regardless of the setting. For someone who sang about country pride and unity, his actions suggested a man more interested in his own spotlight than in community. Fans, too, weren't immune from his rough edges. Concertgoers have recalled his short temper when audiences didn't meet his energy, and his brashness often made fans feel less appreciated and more like props in his political theater. In the end, Toby Keith is a country star whose catalog of hits is undeniable. But his reputation as a hot-headed, egotistical performer who thrived on stirring controversy cements his place among the worst jerks in country music history. His career might stand tall, but his attitude left a trail of enemies, bruised fans, and bitter memories in Nashville. Hank Williams Jr. Hank Williams Jr., the son of the legendary Hank Williams, was born into country music royalty. With his outlaw image, signature shades, and hard-hitting songs, he carved out his own place in Nashville history. But while his talent is undeniable, his reputation is far more complicated. To many fans and critics, Hank Jr. is remembered not just for his music, but for his volatile temper, reckless behavior, and outrageous statements that earned him the title of one of country's biggest jerks. From an early age, Hank Jr. bristled against comparisons to his father. Instead of embracing the legacy, he lashed out, often mocking journalists and fans who dared to connect him to Hank Sr. This bitterness gave rise to an abrasive persona. He wasn't shy about belittling those who questioned him, and his interviews often turned into confrontations rather than celebrations of his music. His political outbursts are legendary. In 2011, he made headlines when he compared President Obama to Adolf Hitler during a television interview. The backlash was immediate and severe, leading ESPN to drop his iconic Monday Night Football theme song. Instead of apologizing, Hank Jr. doubled down, releasing songs attacking liberal America. While some fans cheered his defiance, others were embarrassed by his divisive rhetoric and aggressive tone. Hank Jr.'s drinking and drug use also fueled his bad boy reputation. Tales of drunken rampages, bar fights, and hostile encounters with the press became part of his lore. Even fellow musicians often kept their distance, wary of his unpredictable mood swings and tendency to explode at the smallest slight. His rebellious image may have been good for selling records, but it left scars on his personal and professional relationships. Perhaps most disappointing for fans was how often Hank Jr. seemed to dismiss them. Concert reviews included stories of him berating crowds, delivering sloppy performances, or storming off stage when things didn't go his way. Instead of treating his audience as the loyal supporters who kept his career alive, he sometimes treated them like punching bags for his frustrations. At his best, Hank Williams Jr. is a country outlaw with a voice and catalog that shaped the genre. At his worst, he embodied the ugliest sides of fame: arrogance, hostility, and contempt for those around him. That duality leaves his legacy torn between genius and jerk, proof that even country royalty can fall short when the spotlight fades. Merle Haggard. Merle Haggard is often hailed as one of the greatest country songwriters of all time. His music, gritty, heartfelt, and steeped in working-class struggle, earned him the nickname the Poet of the Common Man. But while Haggard's songs captured the voice of everyday people, his personal life and behavior often told a very different story. To many who knew him off stage, Merle could be dismissive, short-tempered, and at times downright cruel, earning him a spot among country's most notorious jerks. Haggard's troubled youth is well documented. Growing up in California, he spent time in juvenile detention and even served a stint in San Quentin prison. While those experiences gave authenticity to his outlaw image, they also shaped a hardened personality that often lacked patience or humility. Industry insiders recall that Haggard could be extremely difficult to work with, quick to anger, stubborn in negotiations, and unkind to those who didn't immediately meet his expectations. His relationships also suffered under the weight of his volatile character. Married 5 times, Haggard left a trail of broken marriages, often because of his infidelity and temper. Former partners described him as controlling and, at times, emotionally abusive. The man who sang eloquently about heartbreak seemed incapable of handling his own with dignity. Haggard was also known to belittle fellow musicians. Stories spread of him mocking peers behind their backs, dismissing their talent, and refusing to share the stage if he didn't feel they were worthy. Younger artists who idolized him often walked away from encounters disappointed, realizing their hero wasn't the kind mentor they had imagined, but instead an aloof figure more concerned with protecting his ego. Even fans, the very people who gave him his legendary status, weren't always treated kindly. Haggard could be unpredictable in concert, sometimes phoning in performances or lashing out when he didn't feel the crowd's energy. For those who expected the poet of the people, seeing him brush aside his audience was jarring. Merle Haggard's music will always hold a sacred place in country history, but the man behind the microphone was far more complicated. His ability to connect with listeners through song was unmatched, yet his inability to treat those around him with the same grace revealed a darker side. Haggard embodied the contradiction of a country legend, a brilliant artist, but a man who often acted like one of Nashville's worst jerks. Johnny Paycheck. Johnny Paycheck's name is forever tied to one of country music's most iconic working-class anthems, Take This Job and Shove It. The song turned him into a symbol of rebellion, resonating with fans who felt fed up with authority and the grind of daily life. But behind the hit single and the outlaw persona was a man whose real-life behavior often went far beyond rebellion. Paycheck's volatile temper, criminal record, and reckless lifestyle cemented his reputation as one of country's biggest jerks. Paycheck's career was marked by chaos. While his raw voice and rebellious image earned him fame, his offstage antics frequently made headlines for all the wrong reasons. He was notorious for brawls in bars, fueled by alcohol and drugs, and had run-ins with police that seemed to happen almost as often as his chart appearances. Instead of embodying the spirit of the working man with dignity, Paycheck seemed to revel in self-destruction. The most infamous moment of his life came in 1985, when he shot a man in the head during a heated altercation at an Ohio bar. The victim survived, but the act landed Paycheck in prison, shattering what remained of his career. To fans who once saw him as a hero of defiance, this violent outburst proved he wasn't just playing the outlaw, he was living it in the worst possible way. Even before that, Paycheck's treatment of others was often appalling. He developed a reputation for being unreliable, frequently missing shows, showing up late, or performing under the influence. Promoters and bandmates alike grew tired of dealing with his unpredictable behavior, describing him as a man who had little respect for professionalism or the people who worked alongside him. His relationships didn't fare any better. Marriages crumbled under the strain of his addictions, and friends were alienated by his selfish choices. Instead of building a legacy of camaraderie within Nashville, he left a trail of fractured connections and bitter memories. Johnny Paycheck's music had grit, authenticity, and undeniable influence, but the man himself too often embodied the worst cliches of the outlaw lifestyle. His inability to separate rebellion from recklessness and his tendency to lash out violently ensured that his name would be remembered not only for his music, but also for his role as one of country's most notorious jerks. Garth Brooks. Garth Brooks is one of the best-selling artists in country music history, a superstar whose crossover appeal brought the genre into stadiums and mainstream culture like never before. With hits like Friends in Low Places in the Dance, Brooks defined an era of country music in the 1990s. But while his success is undeniable, his reputation behind the scenes has often been less flattering. Many insiders describe him as egotistical, controlling, and obsessed with protecting his own spotlight, qualities that have earned him a place on this list. At the height of his fame, Brooks cultivated an image of the everyman, humble, approachable, and grateful for his fans. Yet, industry veterans tell a different story. Garth was notorious for demanding complete control over his performances, production, and promotion. While artistic ambition is admirable, his insistence on having things done his way left little room for collaboration. Fellow musicians often complained that Brooks put his own brand above the needs of the community, creating friction in Nashville. His quest for dominance extended into record sales. In the late 1990s, Brooks launched a publicity stunt under the alter ego Chris Gaines, attempting to reinvent himself as a pop rock star. Instead of embracing artistic experimentation, critics saw it as a self-indulgent ego trip. Fans who had supported his rise in country felt betrayed, questioning whether Brooks truly respected the genre that made him famous. The experiment flopped, but the arrogance behind it left a lasting dent in his credibility. Stories of Brooks dismissing younger artists also circulate in Nashville. Rather than mentoring rising stars, he has often been accused of blocking opportunities that might threaten his place at the top. His reputation for micromanaging extended to tours and awards shows, where he allegedly fought for top billing and refused to play second to anyone, no matter how respected. even his fans weren't immune to disappointment. Though Brooks cultivated a reputation for caring deeply about his audience, critics argue that his long retirements, sudden comebacks, and constant repackaging of music came across as manipulative marketing tactics rather than genuine artistic decisions. To this day, Garth Brooks remains a towering figure in country history. But the man behind the music is often described as driven more by ego than humility. His obsession with control, his clashes with peers, and his larger-than-life self-image left many in Nashville whispering the same conclusion. Garth Brooks may be a legend, but he's also one of country's most infamous jerks. Kenny Chesney. Kenny Chesney is one of the most successful country performers of the modern era, known for his beach-themed hits like No Shoes, No Shirt, No Problems, and massive stadium tours that draw tens of thousands of fans. His laid-back image as the carefree island cowboy won him millions of admirers. But behind the sunglasses, flip-flops, and easygoing lyrics, Chesney has often been criticized for arrogance, dismissive behavior, and an aloof attitude that makes him one of Nashville's least approachable stars. For years, industry insiders have whispered that Chesney's charm is reserved only for the stage. Backstage and in business dealings, he is said to be cold, controlling, and uninterested in connecting with others unless it benefits his career. Some promoters have described working with him as exhausting, citing unreasonable demands and a lack of gratitude despite his extraordinary success. His brief and highly publicized marriage to actress Renee Zellweger in 2005 also fueled speculation about his character. The annulment, citing fraud as the reason, sparked tabloid frenzy and raised questions about Chesney's honesty in his personal life. While he dodged specifics in interviews, his dismissive responses and refusal to clarify details left fans frustrated and tarnished his wholesome, fun-loving image. Chesney's relationship with fans has also been called into question. While he fills stadiums and sells millions of records, critics argue that he treats his audience more like customers than supporters. Fans have complained about lackluster meet and greets, overpriced tickets, and performances where Chesney seemed to be going through the motions, rather than giving his all. For someone whose career is built on songs about community and connection, the sense of detachment has been disappointing. In Nashville, Chesney's reputation is mixed at best. Younger artists rarely mention him as a mentor, and collaborations are notably absent compared to his peers. Some insiders claim he avoids building relationships within the industry because he doesn't want to share the spotlight. To those who expected a welcoming leader in country music, his self-centered approach came as a rude surprise. Kenny Chesney's legacy as a hitmaker and stadium-filling superstar is secure, but his reputation as a cold, arrogant figure behind the scenes leaves a lasting shadow. The same man who sings about sunsets and friendships on the beach has often been accused of treating people in real life like nothing more than background noise. And that, for many, makes him one of country's most disappointing jerks. David Allan Coe. David Allan Coe is one of the most polarizing figures in country music. Known for his outlaw image and willingness to push boundaries, Coe gained notoriety with songs like You Never Even Called Me by My Name and his rough-edged stage persona. Yet while some hailed him as a fearless rebel, others saw him as one of the most offensive and mean-spirited artists to ever emerge from Nashville. His career is littered with controversies that earned him a permanent reputation as one of country's worst jerks. From the start, Coe embraced shock value. His underground albums, often filled with racist, misogynistic, and homophobic lyrics, were so offensive that even the outlaw community distanced themselves from him. While Waylon Jennings and Willie Nelson embodied rebellion with grit and authenticity, Coe often came across as vulgar for the sake of attention. His unwillingness to draw the line between art and hate alienated countless fans and peers. On stage, Coe's behavior was equally divisive. His concerts were known for being unpredictable, with tirades against audiences, offensive jokes, and belligerent rants. Instead of celebrating fans who paid to see him, he often berated them or launched into crude storytelling that overshadowed his actual music. Many left shows feeling insulted rather than entertained. His personal life only reinforced the negative image. Coe developed a reputation for being combative, unreliable, and extremely difficult to work with. Promoters and fellow musicians complained of his arrogance, describing him as a man who refused to compromise and lashed out when challenged. Unlike other outlaws who cultivated brotherhood within the genre, Coe often isolated himself through hostility and ego. Even in interviews, Coe's words created enemies. He seemed to thrive on offending, brushing off criticism by claiming he was simply telling the truth. But instead of honesty, most saw bitterness, cruelty, and a need to provoke at any cost. David Allan Coe undeniably left a mark on country music, and some of his songs still resonate. But his legacy is overshadowed by the ugliness of his lyrics, his disdain for fans, and his refusal to respect boundaries of decency. Where others in the outlaw movement broke rules to express freedom, Coe often broke them simply to hurt. For that, he will always be remembered as one of the most notorious jerks the country genre has ever produced. Billy Ray Cyrus rose to global fame in the early 1990s with his smash hit Achy Breaky Heart. The song made him a household name overnight, spawning line dancing crazes and topping charts around the world. But while his catchy single turned him into a star, Cyrus quickly became one of the most polarizing figures in country music. To critics, he wasn't just a one-hit wonder clinging to fame. He was a self-absorbed figure whose behavior offstage left many labeling him a jerk. Within Nashville, Cyrus was never fully embraced. Many traditionalists dismissed him as a gimmick, arguing that he cared more about flashy image than authentic artistry. Instead of proving them wrong through humility or collaboration, Cyrus leaned into the fame, often coming across as arrogant and difficult to work with. Industry insiders claimed that he carried himself as though he were above the genre, creating friction with peers who valued respect and tradition. His personal life also became a media circus. Cyrus frequently aired family drama in public, especially through interviews about his daughter Miley Cyrus. Instead of keeping private matters private, he fueled gossip by making bold claims about how Hollywood was destroying his family. Critics accused him of exploiting his daughter's fame for his own spotlight, inserting himself into headlines even when it made Miley's struggles worse. To many, this wasn't protective parenting. It was opportunism. Billy Ray's treatment of fans hasn't always been stellar either. While his loyal base supported him long after his peak, there were numerous stories of him being aloof or dismissive at events. Meet and greet sessions often left fans disappointed, with Cyrus reportedly rushing interactions or seeming uninterested. For an artist who owed his entire career to one massive hit, his attitude toward the people who kept him relevant came across as ungrateful. Even his attempts at comebacks were tainted by controversy. Rather than reinventing himself with dignity, he often leaned on gimmicks, like changing his name to Cyrus or jumping into the hip-hop world with collaborations that baffled country audiences. Instead of humility, his career choices felt like desperate grabs for attention, reinforcing the belief that he valued fame over integrity. Billy Ray Cyrus will forever be remembered for Achy Breaky Heart, but his legacy in country music is stained by arrogance, opportunism, and questionable judgment. For many fans and colleagues, he represents a cautionary tale, a star who let ego overshadow authenticity, earning his place among country's most notorious jerks. LeAnn Rimes. LeAnn Rimes was once hailed as a prodigy, the child star who stunned the world with her powerful voice at just 13 years old. With her breakthrough hit Blue, she was immediately compared to Patsy Cline and seemed destined to be country music's golden girl. But as her career unfolded, Rimes's personal choices and abrasive personality turned much of that early admiration into disappointment. To many fans and industry insiders, she went from America's sweetheart to one of country's most notorious jerks. One of the defining scandals of her career was her highly publicized affair with actor Eddie Cibrian, who at the time was married. The affair, and her eventual marriage to Cibrian, sparked outrage. Fans who had once viewed her as a wholesome figure saw her as selfish and arrogant, flaunting her new relationship despite the pain it caused others. Instead of handling the situation privately, Rimes leaned into the attention, giving interviews and even releasing songs that seemed to capitalize on the scandal. Her behavior toward fans also raised eyebrows. Rimes developed a reputation for being a diva at shows, with stories of her being dismissive during meet and greets or lashing out at criticism online. One infamous incident involved her mocking fans on Twitter who questioned her personal life, escalating feuds rather than diffusing them. This combative attitude made her appear thin-skinned and hostile, alienating the very audience that once adored her. Professionally, Rhimes's relationships with other artists and industry figures were equally strained. She often clashed with record labels, publicly feuding over contracts and accusing executives of exploiting her. While some saw her as a victim of the system, others viewed her as entitled, unable to balance business disputes with professionalism. Her tendency to air grievances publicly, rather than resolving them behind closed doors, painted her as combative and difficult. The contrast between her early promise and her later reputation is striking. Once praised for her angelic voice and maturity beyond her years, she grew into a star more known for her scandals and hostility than her artistry. LeAnn Rimes' voice remains one of the finest in country music, but her behavior, arrogant, combative, and often self-destructive, cemented her fall from grace. Instead of embodying the dignity of the legends she was once compared to, she embraced the drama, ensuring her place among the most controversial jerks in country history. Dwight Yoakam. Dwight Yoakam is one of the most distinctive figures in country music. With his honky-tonk revival sound, tight jeans, and unmistakable voice, he carved out a space in the 1980s and 1990s as both a musician and actor. Critics praised his artistry, and fans admired his originality. But while Yoakam's music earned respect, his personality earned him something else entirely: a reputation for arrogance and coldness that made him one of the least approachable stars in Nashville. From early in his career, Yoakam was known to be fiercely protective of his image. He controlled every detail of his shows, from the set lists to the lighting, and often clashed with promoters who failed to meet his exacting standards. While some admired his perfectionism, many insiders found him inflexible, difficult, and unwilling to compromise. Rather than working collaboratively, Yoakam often treated others as obstacles to his vision. His interactions with fellow artists reinforced that image. Yoakam was rarely seen supporting or mentoring younger musicians, and there were numerous stories of him belittling peers behind the scenes. One notable feud was with Buck Owens, his musical idol turned collaborator. Their partnership began as a celebration of Bakersfield-style country, but ended in bitterness, with Owens accusing Yoakam of being controlling and ungrateful. For fans, the fallout was proof that Yoakam's ego often outweighed his artistry. Fans, too, experienced his aloofness. Meet-and-greet accounts frequently described him as distant, offering little warmth or acknowledgement to the people who adored his music. At concerts, Yoakam sometimes delivered brilliant performances, but gave the impression that he was performing at the audience rather than for them. His stage persona could feel more like a wall than a bridge. In Hollywood, where he pursued acting roles in films like Sling Blade, Yoakam carried the same reputation. Directors and co-stars described him as difficult to work with, a man so focused on his own interpretation that he often clashed with others on set. Instead of embracing collaboration, he projected the same controlling tendencies that had frustrated Nashville for years. Dwight Yoakam's contributions to country music are undeniable. He revived a traditional sound and left an imprint that influenced generations. But his arrogance, coldness, and inability to treat fans and colleagues with genuine humility left a lasting scar on his reputation. For all his talent, Yoakam proved that being brilliant on stage doesn't excuse being a jerk off it. Winona Judd. Winona Judd, one half of the legendary mother-daughter duo The Judds, became one of the most powerful female voices in country music. Her rich vocals and commanding stage presence earned her fame, fortune, and respect, first alongside her mother Naomi and later as a solo artist. But behind the music, Winona's reputation has often been overshadowed by erratic behavior, personal scandals, and an abrasive personality that made her one of Nashville's most controversial stars. Winona's struggles with addiction and personal demons became tabloid fodder for years. Her arrests for driving under the influence, stints in rehab, and tumultuous relationships all painted a picture of instability. While many stars have battled similar issues, Winona's defiance and lack of accountability often rubbed fans the wrong way. Instead of admitting fault, she frequently framed herself as a victim, blaming others or circumstances rather than taking responsibility for her actions. Her relationships within the industry also suffered. Known for her temper and mood swings, Winona was often described as difficult to work with. Band members, promoters, and collaborators recalled her unpredictability. One moment warm and charming, the next cold and dismissive. This inconsistency left people on edge, never sure which version of Winona they would encounter. For many, it was easier to avoid working with her than risk the drama. Even her family ties weren't immune to conflict. Winona's relationship with her sister, actress Ashley Judd, has been famously strained, with both airing grievances in public. The tension intensified after the tragic death of her mother Naomi in 2022, when questions about the family's unity became headlines. Winona's tendency to bring private disputes into the spotlight reinforced her reputation as someone who thrived on conflict, even in the most delicate moments. Fans who once adored her powerhouse performances also began to feel alienated. While many sympathized with her struggles, others grew tired of the drama that seemed to follow her at every turn. Her occasional dismissive remarks during concerts and perceived lack of gratitude didn't help, painting her as someone who took her supporters for granted. Winona Judd's voice is among the greatest in country history, and her legacy with the Judds is undeniable. Yet her personal behavior, marked by arrogance, hostility, and scandal, made her a divisive figure. Instead of being remembered solely as a trailblazing female artist, Winona is also remembered as one of the most difficult personalities Nashville has ever endured. Travis Tritt. Travis Tritt rose to fame in the 1990s as part of country music's class of '89, alongside stars like Garth Brooks and Alan Jackson. With hits such as Here's a Quarter, Call Someone Who Cares, and Any More, he carved out a reputation as a Southern rocker with a powerful voice and rebellious spirit. But while his music resonated with millions, his personality often rubbed people the wrong way. Over the years, Tritt has been criticized for arrogance, hostility, and a hair-trigger temper that made him one of Nashville's most notorious jerks. Tritt's outspoken nature is legendary. Never one to bite his tongue, he's been involved in multiple public feuds with fellow artists. He's taken shots at modern country stars for being too pop, criticized colleagues for political differences, and often carried himself with a superiority that alienated his peers. Instead of offering constructive criticism, Tritt's comments often came across as bitter rants, painting him as more combative than candid. His behavior off stage hasn't helped his image. Tritt has a history of bar fights, heated arguments, and confrontations with fans who dared to criticize him. Concertgoers have reported instances of him storming off stage when he didn't like the crowd's response or berating audience members from the microphone. For an artist who built his career on songs about working-class pride, his treatment of everyday fans often came across as hypocritical. Within the industry, Tritt's reputation for being difficult to work with became well known. Promoters described him as demanding and temperamental, with an ego that made negotiations exhausting. Fellow musicians complained about his unwillingness to compromise, whether it was over stage arrangements, billing order, or collaborations. His defiance may have fit the outlaw image he tried to project, but behind the scenes, it earned him more enemies than allies. Even in recent years, Tritt has kept controversy alive through social media. His political statements and harsh criticisms of younger artists have fueled backlash, reinforcing the perception that he thrives on conflict. While some fans appreciate his blunt honesty, many see him as stuck in the past, unwilling to adapt, and quick to lash out at anyone who disagrees. Travis Tritt remains a talented performer with a loyal following, but his legacy is marred by hostility and arrogance. For every heartfelt ballad or roaring anthem he delivered, there are stories of fights, feuds, and bad behavior. In the end, Tritt's place in country history is secure, but so is his reputation as one of the genre's biggest jerks.